I stood in the middle of the bustling art gallery, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. The walls were lined with vibrant paintings and avant garde sculptures, each piece telling a story that resonated deep within me. I loved art, always had, and here, surrounded by the creative energy, I felt a rush of inspiration. But I knew this night was about more than just art. It was about proving to my family that I could make my own choices, even if they were about whom I loved. I was Amelia Carter, the youngest daughter of one of New York's most influential families. My parents, Gerald and Evelyn Carter, were well known socialites with a reputation for being at the top of the social ladder. They expected nothing less than perfection from me. As I scanned the crowd, I caught sight of my parents, their eyes scanning the room as if they were judging the worth of each guest based on their clothing and connections. Amelia, dear, come over here. Evelyn's voice cut through the noise, and I felt a familiar wave of anxiety wash over me. I knew what was coming. I forced a smile and made my way to them, hoping to blend into the background. What is it, Mom? Look at this piece, she said, gesturing dismissively at a chaotic painting. Isn't it just tragic? How can anyone call that art? Her words dripped with disdain, and I could feel my cheeks heat with embarrassment. Maybe it's supposed to make you feel something, I replied, trying to defend the artist, though my heart wasn't in it. I could see the familiar look of disappointment in her eyes, and I swallowed hard, bracing myself for the inevitable criticism. Oh, sweetie, Gerald chimed in, his voice smooth and condescending. You wouldn't understand. Your taste is just too simplistic. I clenched my fists at my sides, fighting against the urge to scream. It was moments like these that reminded me why I'd started to pull away from them. They had everything: money, status, connections, but it was never enough. They wanted me to fit their mold, and I was tired of it. Just then, I caught sight of him, Sam. He was leaning casually against a wall, his dark hair tousled, a sketch pad in hand. He was wearing an old band t shirt and jeans, completely out of place in the sea of designer suits and dresses. My heart skipped a beat. I had met Sam a few weeks ago at a small art show where he was showcasing his work, and we had clicked instantly. He had a passion for art that I admired, and he made me feel alive in a way that my family never could. Excuse me, I need to go say hi to someone, I said, cutting off my parents before they could respond. I rushed over to Sam, my pulse racing with excitement and a hint of anxiety. Hey, I said breathlessly, smiling widely. I didn't think you'd be here. Wouldn't miss it for the world, he replied, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. This place is insane, right? So many pretentious people. I laughed, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Sam had a way of making everything feel lighter. You're not wrong about that. My parents are judging every painting like it's a competition. Yeah, it's always a competition with them, he said, glancing around with a smirk. But I think it's kind of funny. Look at all the money thrown at these pieces, and they're just uninspired. Exactly, I exclaimed, feeling a connection with him deepen. It's like they're missing the whole point of art. As we talked, I felt my worries melt away, replaced by the thrill of being with someone who understood me. But that comfort was short lived. Amelia, my mother's voice rang out, cutting through the laughter like a knife. I turned to see her striding toward us, Gerald not far behind, his expression darkening as he saw Sam. There you are. We were just looking for you, Evelyn said, her tone icy. Who is this? This is Sam, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He's an artist. A what? Gerald scoffed, clearly unimpressed. Do you mean a struggling artist? Is that why you're hanging out with him? To prove some sort of point. The laughter died in my throat. I could feel the tension crackling in the air, and I knew this was going to get ugly. Sam is incredibly talented, I defended, glancing at Sam, who looked slightly taken aback but held his ground. He's working on some amazing projects. Working on projects? Or just daydreaming about them? Gerald's voice was sharp, and I could see the disdain in his eyes. What kind of future does he have, Amelia? You need to be realistic. My chest tightened as I felt the familiar rush of anger. Dad, you don't know anything about him. He's passionate and driven. He's. He's what? My mother interrupted, her voice rising. An embarrassment? This is the type of person you choose to associate with? You should be looking for someone who can actually give you a future, not someone who will drag you down. Mom, stop it. I shouted, feeling the heat of humiliation wash over me. You don't know anything about him. You never even bothered to ask. Just then, Sam stepped forward, his expression serious. I'm sorry if I'm not what you expected, but I'm proud of what I do. Art isn't just about making money, it's about making a difference. Gerald's face twisted in contempt. A difference? In what world does that matter? You need to understand, son, that success is measured by your bank account, not your ideals. Dad, please, I said, my voice trembling. Stop. You're being cruel. Evelyn scoffed, crossing her arms. You know, Amelia, we've always supported your dreams, but this is just too much. You can't seriously be considering a future with someone like him. This is who I want, Mom. If you can't accept that, then maybe I don't need you in my life, I declared, my heart racing with a mix of defiance and fear. I could feel the air thicken with tension as my words hung between us. My parents exchanged glances, shock and anger etched on their faces. Is this a joke? Gerald said incredulously. You'd rather throw away everything we've given you for someone like him? Maybe I'd rather be happy than live in a gilded cage. I shot back, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. With that, I turned on my heel, grabbing Sam's hand and pulling him away from the scene. I could hear my parents calling after me, but I didn't look back. Amelia, wait. Sam said, concern etched in his features. Are you okay? No, I whispered, my voice breaking. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending I'm someone I'm not just to make them happy. Hey, he said softly, stopping me and turning me to face him. You're not alone in this. I'm here for you no matter what. I nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for him. But deep down, I was terrified. Leaving my family behind felt monumental, and I wondered if I'd made a grave mistake. As we stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, grounding me momentarily. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind. I just need some time to think. Let's go somewhere else, Sam suggested. Somewhere we can breathe. I know a little cafe nearby that's open late. I hesitated but nodded. The last thing I wanted was to go home and face my parents again. I followed him, my heart heavy with uncertainty, but also a flicker of hope. The cafe was small, with dim lighting and an eclectic atmosphere. We found a quiet corner, and I ordered a coffee, hoping it would help clear my head. Sam sat across from me, watching me intently. You're strong, Amelia, he said after a moment of silence. You stood up to them. Not many people can do that. Yeah, but at what cost? I replied, staring into my cup. I don't want to lose my family completely, but I can't change who I love. You shouldn't have to change for anyone, Sam said firmly. You deserve to be happy, and I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm with you. His words warmed my heart, but I couldn't shake the fear that gnawed at me. What if I lost everything? What if my family truly disowned me? Amelia, can I ask you something? Sam said, breaking the silence. If you had to choose between me and your family, what would you pick? I looked up, meeting his gaze. The question hung heavy between us, forcing me to confront the reality of my situation. I felt the weight of my decision crashing down on me, and I knew that there was no easy answer. I don't know, I admitted, my voice trembling. I love you, Sam, but my family means everything to me. They raised me, taught me, shaped who I am, but they also make me feel like I have to be someone I'm not. That's not fair, he replied, his brow furrowed. You shouldn't have to choose, but if they can't accept you for who you are, then maybe it's time to rethink how much they really mean to you. His words struck a chord within me, igniting a fire I hadn't realized was there. Maybe you're right. I can't keep living for them. I want to be true to myself. As we talked, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I could feel my fears slowly receding, replaced by a newfound determination. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I needed to make a choice that reflected who I truly was. By the time we left the cafe, the moon hung high in the sky, casting a soft glow over the city. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Sam reached for my hand, intertwining his fingers with mine, and I felt a sense of comfort that I knew I could hold on to. "I'm ready," I said finally, looking up at him. "I'm ready to fight for us." "Then let's do it," he said, a smile breaking across his face. As we walked back toward my apartment, my heart raced with anticipation and fear, but I also felt a flicker of hope. I was choosing love over the expectations of my family, and in that choice lay the promise of a future filled with possibilities. However, deep down, I knew that my family wouldn't take my defiance lightly. The storm was brewing, and I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't just a battle for love. It was a fight for my identity, my future, and the kind of person I wanted to be. Little did I know that the true test was just around the corner. The confrontation with my family was inevitable, and I steeled myself for the fallout that would come from my choice. But as I looked at Sam, I realized that no matter what happened, I was ready to embrace the journey ahead. It had been a few months since that night at the gallery, and life had taken on a new rhythm. Sam and I had settled into a comfortable routine in our tiny apartment. Despite the cramped space, it felt like home, filled with laughter, art supplies, and the lingering scent of coffee brewing in the morning. Each day brought its challenges, but we faced them together, determined to carve out our own lives away from the expectations of my family. I had taken a job as a junior architect at a small firm, where my passion for design was finally appreciated. The projects were exciting, and I felt a sense of accomplishment that had been missing for so long. Every design I worked on was a reflection of who I was, and with each completed project, I grew more confident in my abilities. Sam was thriving as well. His artwork had started gaining traction, and he was invited to showcase his pieces in local galleries. Each time I saw him in front of a crowd, passionately discussing his art, my heart swelled with pride. He had a talent that could not be ignored, and I knew he was destined for greatness. Yet, despite the joy we found in our work, the shadow of my family loomed over us. I hadn't spoken to them since that night at the gallery, and although I had chosen my path, I often found myself questioning whether I had made the right decision. Would I regret cutting ties with the people who had raised me? As much as I loved Sam, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me. One evening, as we sat on our worn couch surrounded by sketches and half finished canvases, I turned to Sam. "Do you think I should reach out to them?" He looked up from his sketch pad, eyebrows furrowing slightly. "Are you sure that's what you want? They didn't exactly treat you well." "I know," I replied, biting my lip. "But they're still my family. I can't help but wonder how they're doing. I don't want to hold on to anger forever." Sam set his sketchpad down, giving me his full attention. "It's completely normal to feel that way. But remember, they've made their choices too. They've shown you who they are, and sometimes family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who lift you up." His words resonated within me, but I still felt torn. I wanted to bridge the gap, to at least attempt to reconcile, but I was terrified of what that would mean. I had fought so hard to build my own identity, and I didn't want to risk losing that. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to wrestle with the idea of reaching out. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. "Amelia, you can do this," I whispered to myself, trying to gather the courage I needed. Finally, I made up my mind. I would send my mother an email just to check in and see how they were doing. I took a deep breath and began typing, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard as I crafted the message. "Dear Mom, I hope this email finds you well. I've been thinking about you and Dad a lot lately and wanted to reach out. I hope you both are doing okay. Things are going well on my end. I'm really enjoying my job, and Sam is doing great too. I'd love to hear from you and catch up, even if it's just a talk. Love, Amelia." After hitting send, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety wash over me. I had taken a step forward, but I was uncertain about the response. Would they accept my olive branch, or would they respond with disdain? The next few days passed slowly, and each time I checked my email, a rush of nerves would hit me. I fought the urge to check constantly, knowing that it wouldn't change the outcome. Finally, on the fourth day, a response popped up in my inbox. My heart raced as I clicked it open. Dear Amelia, we were surprised to hear from you. It's been a while since we've had a real conversation. We are doing well, though things have been a bit challenging. We hope you are taking care of yourself. As for Sam, we still don't understand your choice. We believe you deserve better than someone like him. Let's schedule a time to talk. Best, Mom. Reading those words stung, and I felt the anger boiling within me again. They hadn't changed at all. My heart sank as I realized they were still judging my choices, and I was once again a disappointment in their eyes. I sat in silence, grappling with a mix of frustration and sadness. What's wrong? Sam asked, peeking over my shoulder. It's my mom. She doesn't get it. She still thinks I deserve better than you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. Sam took a deep breath, his expression a mixture of concern and disappointment. I'm sorry, Amelia. I know this hurts, but you deserve to be with someone who makes you happy. You don't need their approval. I know, I replied, tears threatening to spill over. But it's just so hard to let go. I wanted things to be different. Sam wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. You've come so far already. Don't let their opinions define you. You know who you are and what you want. That's what matters. I nodded, feeling the warmth of his embrace, but I couldn't shake the feeling of longing for acceptance. I had fought for my identity, yet a part of me still craved the approval of my family. Days turned into weeks, and life continued at a hectic pace. My job became increasingly demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. I found myself pouring my heart into my designs, and the team recognized my efforts, giving me more responsibility. I felt empowered, but that empowerment was shadowed by my family's lingering rejection. One evening, as I worked late in the office, my phone buzzed with another email from my mom. My heart sank as I hesitated to open it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked it open. Amelia, we're having a family gathering this weekend. We would love for you to come. It's important to us to try and mend things. Best, Mom. The invitation felt like a double-edged sword. Part of me wanted to go, to see my family, and maybe find a way to reconnect. But another part of me screamed to stay away, to avoid the judgment and criticism that had become so familiar. What did your mom say? Sam asked, looking up from his own work. I took a deep breath, glancing at the screen. They want me to come to a family gathering this weekend. And how do you feel about that? He asked cautiously. I don't know. Part of me wants to go and see if things can improve, but another part is terrified of what they'll say. What if they don't change? What if they treat me like a stranger? Sam placed his hand over mine, his touch grounding me. It's your decision. Just remember, you don't have to let them walk all over you. You fought too hard to be who you are. I nodded, taking in his words. As much as I wanted to believe I could handle it, a part of me still feared their rejection. I spent the rest of the evening weighing my options, my mind racing with thoughts of what could happen. The day of the gathering arrived, and I found myself pacing around our apartment, filled with nervous energy. Sam watched me, concern etched across his face. You don't have to go if you don't want to, he reminded me gently. I know, but I feel like I need to face them, I said, trying to steel my resolve. I want them to see who I've become. Just promise me you'll stand up for yourself, he replied, no matter what they say. I took a deep breath, appreciating his unwavering support. I will. As I arrived at my parents' grand home, I felt the weight of expectation heavy on my shoulders. The house stood tall and imposing, the grandeur a stark reminder of the life I had chosen to leave behind. I hesitated at the door, fear gnawing at me, but I couldn't turn back now. I rang the doorbell, and within moments, my mother answered with a strained smile. Amelia, I'm so glad you could make it. Hi, Mom, I said, forcing a smile as I stepped inside. The familiar scent of fresh flowers wafted through the air, but the warmth of home felt distant. Come in. Everyone is here, she urged, guiding me into the living room. The atmosphere was tense as I entered. My father sat on a plush sofa, a glass of whiskey in hand, and my siblings were scattered around the room, their conversations falling silent as I entered. Look who decided to join us, my brother, Jake said with a smirk, his eyes glinting with mischief. The prodigal daughter. Very funny, Jake, I retorted, rolling my eyes as I made my way to the far end of the room. As I settled into a chair, my mother began introducing me to the guests, a mix of family friends and distant relatives. I felt their eyes scrutinizing me, each one trying to gauge my worth. The conversation turned to my job, and I could see the skepticism etched on their faces. So, Amelia, still working in that little firm? My aunt asked, feigning interest. I hope you're not taking on too much. You wouldn't want to burn out. I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. Actually, I've been given more responsibility, and it's been incredibly rewarding. Is it really what you want, though? My mother chimed in, her tone dripping with condescension. You know you could have had a much brighter future with a little more ambition. That familiar anger bubbled to the surface, but I fought to keep my composure. Mom, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm pursuing my passion, and that's what matters. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. I could feel my family's disapproval weighing down on me, but I held my ground. This was my chance to show them that I was no longer the girl who needed their validation. Amelia, my father finally spoke, his voice low and serious. We're worried about you. This relationship with Sam, it's not right for you. You deserve someone who can provide for you. The air thickened with the weight of his words. I love Sam, and he's an incredible person, I countered, my voice steady. He's talented, and he supports me in ways you can't even imagine. Support is one thing, but he'll never be able to give you the life you deserve, my mother said, her expression hardening. You need to think about your future. I am thinking about my future. I shot back, my heart racing. And I want to be with someone who believes in me, not just someone who fits into your mold of success. The conversation spiraled into a heated argument. Each jab I took met with fierce resistance. My family hurled insults cloaked in concern, while I fought to assert my independence. After what felt like an eternity, I could feel the walls closing in on me. I needed to escape this suffocating atmosphere. I think I need some air, I said abruptly, standing up and leaving the room before anyone could respond. I stepped outside onto the terrace, my heart pounding in my chest. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath as I tried to steady myself. I could hear the faint sounds of the party continuing inside, but the noise felt distant. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Sam standing there, his expression filled with concern. Are you okay? No, I admitted, feeling tears prick at my eyes. I thought maybe coming here would help, but they're still the same. They don't see me at all. Sam pulled me into an embrace, and I melted into him, feeling the warmth of his presence wrap around me like a blanket. You're stronger than you think, he whispered. Don't let them take away your happiness. As I stood there, held tightly in his arms, I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. I couldn't keep letting my family dictate my happiness. I had made my choice, and I had to stand by it, no matter how hard it was. I need to go back in there, I said finally, pulling away to look him in the eyes. I can't let them think they've won. You sure? Sam asked, searching my face for reassurance. I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure, I replied, feeling a surge of confidence. I deserve to stand up for what I believe in. Together, we walked back inside, where the gathering continued, filled with laughter and chatter. But this time, I held my head high. I was Amelia Carter, and I was proud of who I was becoming. As I stepped back into the fray, I could feel the eyes of my family on me. I could see the disbelief etched across their faces, and I knew they wouldn't back down easily. But I had Sam by my side, and that gave me strength. The confrontation was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. No more hiding. No more pretending. I would embrace the life I had chosen, and I would do it proudly. The atmosphere inside the house was electric as I re entered the living room. Conversations continued to flow, but the tension between my family and me felt palpable. I could sense their scrutiny, each glance like a dagger, but I was determined to stand my ground. Sam was right beside me, a solid presence that anchored me amidst the storm. Look who decided to join us again. Jake's voice dripped with sarcasm as I stepped further into the room. Thought you'd run away for good. Very funny, Jake. I replied, my voice steady. But I'm not going anywhere. Maybe we should take a family photo. My sister, Megan, chimed in, her tone mocking. You know, before Amelia goes off to live in a cardboard box with her artist boyfriend. I clenched my fists, the urge to snap back rising within me. Instead, I took a deep breath and focused on Sam, who gave me an encouraging nod, silently reminding me to stay calm. Actually, I think I'm doing just fine, I said, forcing a smile as I addressed the room. I've been working hard, and Sam is doing amazing things with his art. Oh, really? Evelyn interjected, her voice icy. What exactly are those amazing things? You do realize that art doesn't pay the bills, right? I felt a surge of frustration. Art is more than just a paycheck. It's about passion, creativity, and expression. Something you seem to have forgotten in your quest for status. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see my family exchanging glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and disdain. I had never stood up to them like this before, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. Amelia, you're being ridiculous, my father said, his tone condescending. You need to think practically. This is about your future, your security. I've spent my entire life trying to meet your expectations, I shot back, feeling a fire ignite within me. But now, I want to live for myself. I'm choosing a path that makes me happy, not one that looks good on paper. Choosing happiness? That's a luxury, not a reality, Gerald said, shaking his head. You need to be realistic. Life is not a fairy tale, and you're going to regret these decisions when you're older. I felt the familiar pang of anger, but I refused to back down. I won't regret being true to myself. I've wasted enough time trying to fit into your mold. I'm done. The tension in the room shifted, and I could see my family's shock morphing into irritation. But I didn't care. I was finally saying what I needed to say, and it felt empowering. Sam stepped forward, his presence commanding. Amelia has every right to choose her own life. You should be supporting her, not belittling her choices. Support? For someone like him, Evelyn's voice rose, and I could hear the disdain in her words. He's not someone we would ever consider acceptable for our daughter. Why? Because he doesn't fit into your narrow view of success. I challenged. You think money and status define a person, but they don't. Character and passion do. I could feel my heart racing, the adrenaline pumping through my veins as I faced my family. This was the moment I had been waiting for, and I wasn't going to let them diminish my worth any longer. Amelia, this isn't the time or place for this discussion, Gerald warned, his voice low and menacing. No, Dad, this is exactly the time. I insisted, my voice strong. I've hidden my true self for too long. I refuse to allow you to dictate my happiness any longer. As the words left my mouth, I felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. I was stepping into uncharted territory, and I wasn't sure where it would lead. But there was no turning back now. The silence was deafening, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in my father's eyes. But it was quickly replaced by anger. You'll regret this, Amelia. You're throwing away everything we've worked for. You're making a mistake. Maybe the mistake was trying to live up to your expectations instead of following my own dreams. I shot back. I don't want your life or your choices. I want my own. With that declaration, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I was no longer the little girl seeking approval. I was a woman asserting her independence, and it felt incredible. Sam's hand found mine, and I squeezed it, drawing strength from his unwavering support. But as the tension hung in the air, I could see my family's expressions hardening. You think you're making a bold statement, my mother sneered. but you're just a child playing at adulthood. You'll come crawling back when reality hits. I shook my head, refusing to let her words penetrate my newfound resolve. I'm not a child. I'm choosing my own path, and I won't be bullied into submission anymore. The gathering had shifted into a battlefield, and I stood my ground, ready to defend my choices. But with every moment that passed, I could feel the weight of my family's disdain pressing down on me. I think it's time for you to leave, my father said coldly, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. You've made your point. You're clearly not ready for this family. My heart sank at his words, but I stood tall. I won't leave just because you say so. This is my family too, and I have a right to be here. Not anymore, Gerald replied, his tone final. You've chosen your path, and it doesn't include us. You need to understand that there are consequences for your actions. The finality in his voice struck me like a physical blow. My heart raced as the reality of the situation sank in. They were serious. They would disown me. Amelia, let's go, Sam urged gently, sensing my turmoil. I hesitated, torn between wanting to fight for my place in the family and the desire to escape the suffocating atmosphere. But I can't just let them throw me out. Sometimes walking away is the strongest choice you can make, he said softly. You deserve better than this. With a heavy heart, I turned to my family one last time. I hope one day you'll understand that I chose to follow my own dreams, and I won't let anyone, especially you, take that away from me. I took a step back, feeling a mix of sadness and empowerment. As I walked toward the door, I felt Sam beside me, his presence grounding me as I left the house filled with memories and expectations behind. Once outside, I took a deep breath, the cool air hitting my face like a refreshing wave. I was free, but at what cost? My heart ached with the weight of my family's rejection, but I knew I had made the right choice for myself. Are you okay? Sam asked, concern etched on his face as he led me to the car. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could make them see me. They don't deserve to see you if they can't accept you for who you are, he replied, his tone firm. You're stronger than this. You'll get through it. As we drove away, the tears I had held back finally spilled over, and I let them fall, feeling the weight of my emotions crashing down on me. I never wanted it to end like this, I said, my voice shaking. I wanted my family to accept me. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest freedom, Sam said gently, reaching for my hand. You've done something brave. You've chosen love over fear. As the city lights blurred past us, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I had lost my family, but I was beginning to realize that perhaps I had gained something far more important, my own identity. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions as I navigated life without my family's support. My work kept me busy, and I threw myself into my projects, pouring my heart into every design. My colleagues began to notice my passion, and I received praise for my contributions. It felt good to be recognized for my talents, but at the same time, I felt a lingering void where my family used to be. Sam was my rock during this time. He continued to thrive in his art, gaining traction in the local scene. His passion was infectious, and I loved watching him create, surrounded by canvases and paint splatters. He challenged me to push my own boundaries, and together we built the life that felt authentic. However, as I looked at our life together, the ache of my family's absence grew heavier. I missed the moments we had shared, the laughter, the support, and even the arguments. I wanted to believe that things could be different, that one day they would come to understand my choices. One evening, as we were winding down after a long day, Sam turned to me. You know, we should celebrate your success. You've worked so hard and you deserve it. What did you have in mind? I asked, a smile creeping onto my face. How about a small gathering with some of our friends? We can showcase your latest project and invite everyone over for dinner. It'll be fun. I love the idea. That sounds perfect. Let's do it. We spent the next few days planning the gathering, inviting friends from work and Sam's art community. The excitement built as the day approached, and I found myself feeling lighter, more alive than I had in weeks. When the day finally arrived, our apartment was filled with laughter and conversation, the walls alive with the energy of our friends. I stood in the kitchen, preparing food, as Sam mingled with our guests, showcasing his artwork on the walls. Amelia, come see this, one of our friends called, waving me over. I set down the tray of hors d'oeuvres and joined them in the living room. As I walked in, I was greeted by cheers and applause. Sam stood proudly next to a sketch he had created specifically for the evening, a piece inspired by our journey together. The colors danced across the canvas, vibrant and full of life. I'm so proud of you, Amelia, he said, pulling me into a warm embrace. This is just the beginning. I felt a rush of gratitude as I took in the support from our friends. This was my new family, the people who embraced me for who I was, and it felt incredible. As the evening wore on, laughter and music filled the air, and for the first time in a while, I felt truly happy. But as I glanced around the room, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that my family was missing from this celebration. Later in the evening, as we gathered for dinner, someone raised a toast to Amelia and Sam. May you continue to chase your dreams and inspire us all. I smiled, my heart swelling with love and appreciation for the people who surrounded me. But in the back of my mind, the thoughts of my family loomed large, casting a shadow over the joy of the moment. After the gathering wound down and our friends departed, I found myself sitting on the couch, feeling both elated and introspective. Sam joined me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. What's on your mind? He asked gently. I love this life we're building, I said, staring at the empty room filled with remnants of our celebration. But I can't help but think about my family. I wonder if they're okay. They're not your responsibility, Sam reminded me. You've done everything you can to reach out. They've made their choice. I know, but it still hurts, I admitted, feeling the tears welling up in my eyes. I thought maybe they'd come around, that we could find common ground. Maybe one day they will, he said softly. But right now, you need to focus on you, on us. You're building something beautiful here, and I'm so proud of you. I leaned into him, drawing comfort from his presence. Thank you for always being there for me. I don't know what I'd do without you. As I settled into the warmth of his embrace, I realized that while I couldn't control my family's choices, I could control my own. I was creating a life that was meaningful to me, filled with love, art, and acceptance. However, I knew deep down that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The world outside was unpredictable, and I had yet to face the full fallout of my decision to leave my family behind. The moment of reckoning would come, and I would have to be ready to face it. Little did I know that soon, I would be tested in ways I never expected, and the decisions I had made would ripple through my life in unimaginable ways. But for now, I chose to focus on the present, embracing the love and support that surrounded me, and taking each day as it came. Life had settled into a surprising rhythm after our celebration. I was pouring myself into my work, and my confidence blossomed as I tackled more challenging projects at the architecture firm. Each day felt like a small victory, a testament to my resolve to live authentically. Sam's artwork was gaining more recognition too, and it was inspiring to see him thrive in his passion. However, a nagging sense of unease lingered in the back of my mind, an unshakable feeling that something was about to change. One afternoon, as I was finalizing a design for a new community center, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen and saw an unknown number. For a moment, I hesitated, my heart racing. I had grown accustomed to avoiding calls from my family, bracing myself for the usual barrage of judgment and disappointment. But something compelled me to answer. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Amelia? The voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. It was my mother. Yes, I replied cautiously, my heart pounding. It's been a while. We need to talk, she said, her tone clipped and formal. Talk about what? I asked, a mix of anxiety and apprehension coursing through me. About your father. He's not well, she replied, her voice suddenly laced with concern. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? What's wrong? He's been having some health issues and we think it might be serious, she explained. We need you to come home. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: fear, guilt, and confusion all battling for dominance. I I don't know, Mom. I've been through so much, and I'm not sure if I can just come back like nothing happened. This isn't about you, Amelia. This is about your father. He's in a vulnerable place, and we need our family together right now, she said, her voice softening. Why should I believe that this is genuine? I asked, a bitter taste in my mouth. You've spent years telling me that my choices are wrong. Why should I drop everything for a family that disowned me? There was a moment of silence on the line, and I could almost hear her searching for words. Because we're still family, and that matters. I know we haven't seen eye to eye, but this is different. We're reaching out. I closed my eyes, torn between the anger that still simmered within me and the instinctual urge to support my family in a time of crisis. How bad is it? Bad enough that we're worried. Please just come. We can figure things out. Your father needs you, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Taking a deep breath, I felt my resolve start to waver. The weight of the situation pressed down on me, and I felt a familiar tug of duty towards my family. Okay, I finally said, my voice shaking slightly. I'll come home. Thank you, she said, relief evident in her tone. We'll be waiting for you. As I hung up the phone, a mix of dread and apprehension flooded my mind. I had fought so hard to create a life independent of my family, and now I was being pulled back into their world, a world I had tried so hard to escape. Are you okay? Sam asked, watching me closely as I set my phone down. I let out a shaky breath, trying to gather my thoughts. That was my mom. My dad is not well. They want me to come home. Sam's brow furrowed with concern. Do you want to go? I don't know, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Part of me wants to be there for him, but another part is terrified of what it means to go back. I can't imagine how hard this is for you, Sam said gently, but you have to do what feels right for you. You've come so far in reclaiming your life. I just wish it didn't feel so complicated, I replied, frustration bubbling up. I thought I had made my choices clear, but now I feel like I'm being pulled back into the chaos. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. What would it mean to return home? Would my family welcome me back? Or would they only heap on more guilt for my choices? By morning, I had made up my mind. I would go home, if only to see my father and assess the situation. I knew that I couldn't turn my back on him, no matter how difficult my family had been. The drive back to my parents' house was long and filled with trepidation. As the familiar skyline of New York City faded into the distance, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I hadn't been back since the night of the family gathering, and as I approached their home, memories flooded my mind, some happy, some painful. When I finally arrived, the house looked the same as I remembered, grand and imposing, with perfectly manicured lawns and elegant decor. I parked in the driveway, my heart racing as I stepped out of the car. Here goes nothing, I whispered to myself, forcing my legs to move toward the front door. I rang the bell, and moments later, my mother opened the door, her expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. Amelia, thank you for coming. Where is Dad? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He's in the living room, she replied, stepping aside to let me in. As I entered the house, I felt the familiar weight of expectation settle over me. My mother led me through the hallway, and I glanced around, taking in the framed family photos that adorned the walls. Each picture felt like a reminder of the life I had tried to escape. When we reached the living room, my father sat in a chair, looking frail and worn. His once vibrant demeanor had faded, and I felt a pang of sadness at the sight of him. Dad, I said softly, stepping forward. Amelia, he replied, his voice weak but filled with emotion. I'm glad you're here. I crossed the room and hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his embrace mixed with the chill of his illness. How are you feeling? Better, I hope, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'm scared, Amelia. I'm scared of what's happening. I'm here for you, I assured him, pulling back to look into his eyes. We'll get through this together. I spent the next few hours sitting with my father, listening as he shared his fears and concerns. It was strange to see him so vulnerable, stripped of the confidence and authority he usually exuded. As we talked, I felt a flicker of the connection we had once shared, a bond that had been overshadowed by years of conflict. Meanwhile, my mother flitted around the house, making tea and checking on us periodically. I could sense her apprehension, her desire for everything to return to how it once was. But I was cautious. I knew that it wouldn't be so simple. Amelia, my father said after a while, his voice heavy with sincerity, I want to apologize for how I've treated you. I've let my pride get in the way of our relationship, and I'm sorry. His words caught me off guard, and I felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. Dad, I appreciate that, but it's going to take time to rebuild what we've lost. I know, he said, his gaze steady, but I want to try. You're my daughter, and I've realized that I've been too focused on appearances and not enough on what really matters, family. As we spoke, I could feel the walls between us slowly starting to crumble. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it felt like a step in the right direction. That evening, I sat in the living room with my parents, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. We shared stories and laughter, and I found myself reminiscing about happier times. For a moment, it felt like we were healing, and I clung to that feeling. But as the night wore on, the reality of our situation crept back in. My father's health issues loomed large, and I could sense my mother's anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. It was a fragile peace, one I wasn't sure would last. As I prepared to go to bed that night, my mother stopped me in the hallway. Amelia, can we talk? Sure, I replied, my heart racing as I followed her into the guest room. I know things have been difficult between us, she began, her voice shaky. But I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. I just, I thought I was doing what was best for you. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I understand, Mom, but your idea of what's best for me and what I want are two very different things. I realize that now, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't want to lose you. I want to support you in whatever path you choose. Support means accepting my choices, even if you don't agree. I replied gently. I want to feel like I belong here, but I need you to understand that I won't change who I am for anyone, even you. She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. I'll try, Amelia. I promise. But it's going to take time for me to adjust to this new reality. Just know that I'm still the same person, I said, my voice steady. I'm still your daughter, and I want to be part of this family, but only if it means being accepted for who I am. As I settled into bed that night, a sense of hope swelled within me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of a new chapter for my family. But as the days passed, I realized that the healing process was far from simple. My father's health continued to fluctuate, and my mother's worry grew more pronounced. I found myself caught between the desire to support my family and the fear that old patterns would resurface. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when my phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Hey, how are you holding up? Miss you. I smiled at his message, grateful for his support. It's been tough, but I think things are improving. I hope to see you soon. He responded quickly, let me know if you need anything. I'm here for you. As I set my phone down, I felt a wave of longing wash over me. I missed Sam's presence, his laughter, and the comfort of our shared life. That evening, as I sat with my parents in the living room, my mother suddenly turned to me. Have you spoken to Sam lately? Yes, I've been keeping in touch, I replied, a smile creeping onto my face at the thought of him. I think it's time you brought him over, she said, surprising me with her suggestion. We need to understand the people who are important to you. Are you sure? I asked, my heart racing at the idea. You've made it clear how you feel about him. I know, but things have changed, she replied, her tone sincere. I want to try to bridge the gap. You deserve to be happy, and I want to know the person who makes you happy. I took a deep breath, weighing her words carefully. This could either be a breakthrough or a disaster. Okay, I'll invite him over. The next day, I called Sam and explained the situation. I'm inviting you to dinner with my parents. They want to meet you, I said, my voice wavering with nerves. Are you sure that's a good idea? He asked cautiously. What if they don't accept me? They want to try to understand me, and I think it's worth the risk. I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Besides, you have every right to stand your ground, too. All right, I'll be there, he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. When the day of the dinner arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I spent the afternoon preparing, cooking the family recipes my mother had taught me, while my mind raced with possibilities. What would my parents think of Sam? Would they accept him, or would their old prejudices resurface? As the hour approached, I dressed carefully, wanting to strike a balance between my identity and my family's expectations. I wore a simple but elegant dress, a reflection of my growth over the past few months. When Sam arrived, I felt a rush of relief. He looked dapper in a button down shirt, and the moment our eyes met, I could sense his support. Hey, he said, wrapping me in a warm hug. You ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, a smile breaking through my nerves. As we walked into the living room together, my heart raced. My parents greeted Sam with a mix of curiosity and caution, and I could sense the tension in the air. Sam, thank you for coming, my mother said, her voice polite but reserved. Thank you for having me, he replied, his demeanor calm and confident. We settled at the dining table, and the meal began. My parents asked Sam questions about his art and his background, and he answered with poise and sincerity. I felt a swell of pride watching him handle the situation with grace, but I could also see my parents grappling with their own discomfort. At one point, my father shifted the conversation, his tone suddenly serious. So, Sam, what do you plan to do for a living? Art is nice, but it doesn't pay the bills. I could feel Sam tense slightly, but he remained composed. I believe that art can be a powerful way to influence change and inspire others. I'm currently working on some projects that I hope will resonate with a broader audience. Gerald nodded, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. That's all well and good, but you need to think about stability. You don't want to end up struggling like many artists do. Stability is important, but so is passion, Sam replied, his voice steady. I believe in following my dreams, and I want to inspire others to do the same. The conversation continued, and while there were moments of tension, I also saw glimpses of understanding. My parents were beginning to see Sam as more than just a poor artist. As the evening progressed, laughter began to fill the air. I could see my parents softening, their defenses lowering as they began to engage with Sam on a personal level. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this dinner could be the turning point we all needed. But just when I thought things were going smoothly, the conversation took a turn. Sam, I just can't help but wonder how you plan to take care of Amelia, my mother said, her voice cutting through the laughter. You have to understand that our daughter deserves the best. I felt the tension return as Sam's expression shifted. I believe I can take care of Amelia in ways that go beyond material things. Love and support matter just as much, if not more. That's all well and good, but love doesn't pay the rent, Gerald interjected, his voice filled with judgment. I could see Sam's jaw clench, but he held his ground. I believe that together, we can build a life that reflects our values. We're not just focused on material success, we want to create something meaningful. The room fell silent, and I felt the weight of my parents' disapproval pressing down on us. But Sam didn't falter. He looked at me, and I could see the determination in his eyes. Amelia deserves to be happy, and I'm committed to making sure she is, he said, his voice steady. No matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together. As the words hung in the air, I felt a swell of pride for Sam. He was standing up for us, for our love, and it filled me with hope. But as the night continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents were still struggling to accept this new reality. Their expressions remained guarded, and I knew this conversation was far from over. When the dinner finally came to an end, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. My parents had made an effort, and while it wasn't perfect, it was a step in the right direction. As we said our goodbyes, I turned to Sam, my heart racing. Thank you for tonight. You were incredible. I just spoke my truth, he said with a smile. I believe in us, Amelia. No matter what they say, we can make this work. As we left my parents' house, the cool night air enveloped us, and I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of freedom wash over me. I had faced my family, and while there was still much to work through, I felt a newfound strength within me. But as we drove home, I couldn't shake the sense that the real battle was just beginning. My family might be willing to try, but the scars of our past wouldn't disappear overnight. I knew I had to be prepared for the challenges ahead, for the doubts that would inevitably arise. As I settled into bed that night, I reflected on the evening. Sam had been my rock, and I was grateful for his unwavering support. But I also knew that I would need to dig deep and summon every ounce of strength to face whatever came next. The next few weeks passed in a blur of uncertainty. I continued to juggle my work while navigating the complexities of my family dynamics. My father's health fluctuated, and each visit home felt like a balancing act between supporting him and staying true to myself. One evening, as I was preparing to head back to my parents' house for another visit, I received a text from my mother. We need to talk. It's important. My stomach dropped. I could feel the anxiety creeping in as I replied, What's going on? Just come over, she texted back, and the urgency in her words sent my heart racing. When I arrived at their house, I could sense the tension in the air. My parents were sitting in the living room, and I could see the concern etched on their faces. Amelia, thank you for coming, my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. What's wrong? I asked, my heart racing. We've received some news about your father's health, she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. My heart sank as I braced myself for what was to come. What is it? They've found something concerning in his latest tests, she said, her voice cracking. We're waiting for the specialist to give us more information, but I felt the world tilt beneath me, and I struggled to process the weight of her words. What does that mean? We don't know yet, my father interjected, his expression serious. But we wanted you to be prepared for what lies ahead. As I sat down, the gravity of the situation settled over me like a heavy blanket. I could feel the tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but I fought to keep them at bay. What can I do? We need you to be here for support, my mother said, her voice filled with a mix of desperation and hope. You're our daughter, and we need you now more than ever. I nodded, my heart aching for the pain my family was facing. Despite the challenges that had divided us, I couldn't deny the love I still felt for them. As the evening unfolded, we talked more about the situation, and I could see the fear in my parents' eyes. I offered to help in any way I could, to be there through the uncertainty, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose. In that moment, I realized that family meant more than just acceptance. It meant support during the darkest times. And while our relationship was still fragile, I was willing to navigate the complexities in order to find a way forward. But as I left their house that night, a sense of foreboding filled my heart. I knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but I also felt a newfound determination to stand by my family's side, no matter what came next. The following days felt like a blur of uncertainty and tension as my family awaited more news about my father's health. Each call from my mother sent a fresh wave of anxiety coursing through me, and every visit felt increasingly heavy with unspoken fears. The specialist was taking longer than expected to provide a clear diagnosis, and with each passing moment, the weight of the unknown hung over us like a storm cloud. I was determined to be there for my parents, but the emotional toll was overwhelming. It was as if my father's illness had cast a long shadow over our attempts to rebuild our relationship. Though we had shared moments of connection in the previous weeks, the specter of his declining health loomed larger, reminding us of the fragility of our situation. One evening, as I prepared dinner in my parents' kitchen, I could feel my mother's anxiety radiating through the house. She paced back and forth, glancing at her phone every few minutes, waiting for any news. I could see the toll it was taking on her. Her usual poise was replaced by a sense of urgency and fear. Mom, why don't you sit down for a moment? I suggested gently, trying to ease her tension. You need to take care of yourself, too. I can't sit still, she replied, wringing her hands. Not until we know what's going on. I need to be ready for anything. I nodded, trying to understand her need for control in a situation that felt entirely out of our hands. I get it, but worrying won't change the outcome. Maybe you should distract yourself a bit. Distract myself? She scoffed, her voice edged with frustration. This is my husband we're talking about. How can I possibly distract myself? Let's make dinner together then. I proposed, hoping to shift the atmosphere. Cooking always helps me focus. After a moment, she relented, and we started working side by side in the kitchen. Chopping vegetables and stirring pots provided a small reprieve from the weight of our worries. As we cooked, I could feel the walls between us slowly beginning to crack. For a moment, it felt like we were returning to a simpler time before all the chaos had taken over our lives. What do you think the doctor will say? I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. I don't know, but I'm terrified, she admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. I can't bear the thought of losing him. My heart ached at her vulnerability. He's strong, Mom. He's always been strong. We'll get through this together, no matter what. I just wish I could turn back time, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I've spent so long worrying about appearances and status that I've neglected what truly matters. The admission hung heavy in the air, and I felt a surge of empathy for her. We can't change the past, but we can choose to be present now. I reminded her gently. Let's focus on what we have right now. As we sat down to dinner, my father joined us, looking slightly more energized than he had in days. What's all this? He asked, a hint of his old humor shining through. Just a little comfort food, I replied, trying to keep the mood light. Figured we could all use it. Looks great, Amelia, he said, offering me a warm smile. It felt like a balm for my anxious heart, and I returned the gesture, hoping that we could hold on to this moment of connection. As we ate, the conversation turned to lighter topics, old family stories, and fond memories. For the first time in what felt like ages, we were laughing together, and the tension in the room began to dissipate. But beneath the surface, I could sense the unspoken worries lingering, and I knew that the heaviness would return soon enough. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a mix of hope and dread swirling within me. I wanted to believe that my father would pull through, but the uncertainty was suffocating. I reached for my phone, desperate for the comfort of Sam's presence, and sent him a quick message. Just had dinner with my parents. It was nice, but it's still so tense here. He replied almost instantly. I'm glad you had a good dinner. I'm here for you whenever you need to talk. Let's plan a day together soon. I felt a warmth spread through me at his words. I miss you. I could use a break from all this. Let's make it happen, he texted back, and I could picture his smile, the way it lit up his face. Just remember, you're stronger than you think. You've got this. The next day, the waiting finally came to an end. My mother called me in the afternoon, her voice trembling as she delivered the news. Amelia, the doctor wants to meet with us. It's about your father's test results. My heart dropped, and I felt a cold rush of panic. I'll be right there, I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. When I arrived at the hospital, I found my parents sitting in a small waiting room, both looking anxious. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was about to unfold. The doctor entered a few moments later, a grave expression on his face. Thank you for coming, he said, glancing at each of us in turn. I have some difficult news to share. As he explained the diagnosis, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My father had been diagnosed with a serious condition that would require extensive treatment and management. The words blurred together, and I struggled to process the implications of what the doctor was saying. My mother clutched my father's hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What does this mean for him?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It means that we'll need to act quickly to develop a treatment plan," the doctor replied. "There will be challenges ahead, but I want you to know that we have options." I glanced at my father, who sat stoically, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The reality of the situation hit me like a freight train, and I felt a mix of anger and helplessness rising within me. "We'll be with you every step of the way," I said, my voice firm as I looked at my parents. "We'll get through this together." In the days that followed, our family rallied around my father. We spent hours researching his condition, attending doctor appointments, and discussing treatment options. It was a whirlwind of information, and I found myself caught between the emotional upheaval of my father's diagnosis and the logistical challenges of supporting him. I was determined to be present for my family, but I also struggled with the weight of my own feelings. Each time I visited, I felt the pull of my old life clashing with the new one I had fought to create. I was constantly reminded of the delicate balance between family obligations and my own independence. During one particularly intense meeting with the medical team, my father's doctor laid out a treatment plan that included a combination of medication and therapy. The reality of the situation settled over us like a fog, and I could see the fear in my father's eyes as he processed the information. "Will this work?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The prognosis can be positive if we stay on top of the treatment," the doctor replied. "But it's important to remember that this will be a long journey and there will be ups and downs along the way." As we left the hospital that day, the weight of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. My parents leaned on each other for support, and I could feel the bond between them growing stronger in the face of adversity. It was a bittersweet realization. While I had always wanted a strong family dynamic, it took a crisis for us to come together. I returned home that night, feeling emotionally drained. As I walked through the door, Sam was there waiting for me, his expression filled with concern. "How did it go?" he asked, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Not great," I admitted, tears welling up in my eyes. "He's been diagnosed with a serious condition. The doctor says it's going to be a long journey." "I'm so sorry, Amelia," Sam said softly, rubbing my back. "You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you." I pulled back, wiping away my tears. "Thank you. It's just hard to see my family in so much pain. I thought we were starting to rebuild our relationship, and now this." "Focus on the positives," he encouraged. "You're there for them, and they need you now more than ever. You're making a difference." "I hope so," I replied, feeling the weight of his words. "It just feels like everything is crumbling around us." In the following weeks, I found myself caught in a cycle of supporting my parents and managing my work. It was exhausting, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose as I helped navigate my father's treatment plan. I became the point person, coordinating appointments and keeping track of medications, and in many ways, it felt like I was stepping into a new role. However, the strain of the situation was taking a toll on me. The pressure to be strong for my family while maintaining my own identity felt overwhelming at times. I missed the carefree moments I had shared with Sam, the laughter and joy that had once filled our days. I longed for the lightness that had been overshadowed by the heaviness of my father's illness. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the hospital, I sat on the couch with Sam, feeling drained. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "You need to take care of yourself too," he said gently. "You can't pour from an empty cup." "I know," I sighed, resting my head against his shoulder. "I just feel so torn. I want to be there for them, but it's hard to juggle everything." "Let's take a break this weekend," he suggested. "Just the two of us. We can go to that little cabin by the lake you love. You need some time to recharge." The idea sounded wonderful, and I felt a flicker of excitement at the thought of escaping the chaos. "That sounds perfect. I'd love that." As the weekend approached, I found myself looking forward to our getaway. I needed a moment to breathe, to step away from the pressures of my family situation, even if just for a little while. When we arrived at the cabin, I felt an immediate sense of peace wash over me. The crisp air and serene surroundings enveloped me like a warm blanket. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world begin to lift, if only momentarily. We spent our days hiking, exploring the nearby trails, and cooking together in the cozy kitchen. Each moment felt like a much needed escape from reality, and I relished in the laughter we shared. It reminded me of the simple joys of life, the moments that made it all worthwhile. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for Sam and the life we were building together. Thank you for bringing me here, I said softly. I really needed this. I'm glad, he replied, taking my hand in his. You deserve to find joy, even amidst all the chaos. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of strength. I knew that the challenges with my family were far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Returning home, I felt lighter, more grounded. I was still facing uncertainty, but I had a clearer understanding of my priorities. My father's health challenges were ongoing, and I would continue to be there for my family, but I also needed to nurture my own happiness. As I settled back into my routine, I found that I was able to balance my responsibilities more effectively. I became more organized, managing my time between work, family, and Sam. But even amidst the busyness, I made sure to carve out moments for self care and reflection. Then one day, I received a call from my mother that sent a chill down my spine. Amelia, we need to talk about your father's treatment plan. The doctor wants to discuss some new options. The urgency in her voice set my heart racing. I'll be right there, I replied, my stomach knotting with anxiety. When I arrived at their house, the atmosphere felt tense, and my parents were waiting for me in the living room. My father looked pale, and my mother's expression was tight with worry. Thank you for coming, my mother said, her voice trembling. The doctor has some important information for us. As we sat down, I felt the gravity of the moment weigh heavily upon us. The doctor entered the room, his demeanor serious as he took a seat across from us. Thank you for being here, he said, glancing at each of us. I have some updates regarding your father's condition. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The words that followed would change everything. We need to discuss the next steps in your father's treatment, the doctor began. While the initial plan was effective, we're seeing some unexpected results in his recent tests, and I want to ensure we're on the right path. As he spoke, I felt the walls closing in around me. I had thought we were making progress, and the idea of setbacks sent my heart racing. The uncertainty felt suffocating, and I could see the fear mirrored in my parents' eyes. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor laid out a new treatment plan, one that involved more intensive therapies and potential risks. My father's expression shifted from concern to outright fear, and I could see the weight of the news pressing down on him. We'll do whatever it takes, I said, my voice steady as I turned to my father. We'll face this together. But as I looked around the room, I could feel the tension thickening. My parents' fear was palpable, and I knew that our family would need to rely on each other more than ever. I just hoped we could find a way to navigate the challenges without losing sight of the love that bound us together. That evening, I left my parents' house feeling a mix of determination and fear. The road ahead would be difficult, and the challenges would test us in ways we had never imagined. But as I drove home, I knew that I would fight for my father, for my family, and for the life we were building together. I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, whatever it may bring. The days following the meeting with the doctor felt like a whirlwind. I found myself caught in a relentless cycle of hospital visits, appointments, and discussions about treatment options for my father. The gravity of his illness hung over us, and I could see the strain it was putting on my parents' relationship. My mother oscillated between moments of hope and despair, while my father tried to maintain a brave face, though it was becoming increasingly difficult. One evening, after another long day at the hospital, I collapsed onto the couch in my parents' living room. The weight of everything felt suffocating, and I closed my eyes, trying to escape the emotions swirling within me. I was tired, not just physically, but emotionally. The reality of my father's illness was a heavy burden, one I hadn't anticipated carrying. Amelia? My mother's voice broke through my thoughts, and I opened my eyes to see her standing in the doorway, looking weary but determined. Can we talk? Of course, Mom, I replied, sitting up and motioning for her to join me. She settled onto the couch beside me, her expression somber. I've been thinking about everything about your father's treatment. I know it's overwhelming, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your support. I'm here for you both, I said, reaching for her hand. We're in this together. I know, but I also realize that I haven't been the best mother to you, she said, her voice trembling. I've let my own fears and expectations cloud my judgment, and I'm sorry for that. I felt a pang of emotion at her words. It's okay, Mom. We've all been through so much. I understand that you're scared. I am too. Her eyes glistened with tears as she nodded. I just want what's best for our family, and I don't want to lose him. It's been hard to see him like this. I know, I said softly, but we have to focus on the positives. We're doing everything we can to support him. I've been thinking that maybe we should have a family meeting, she suggested, wiping away a tear. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about his treatment and how we can help him. That sounds like a good idea, I agreed. It's important for us to communicate and support each other during this time. As we discussed the logistics, I could feel the tension in the air begin to dissipate. We were working toward a common goal, supporting my father, and that sense of unity felt empowering. The following day, we organized the family meeting, inviting my siblings to join us. I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation as I prepared for the discussion. I wanted to ensure that we could address any concerns and fears, but I also knew that my siblings would likely have their own perspectives. When my brother and sister arrived, I could sense the underlying tension. Jake was quiet, his expression serious, while Megan fidgeted nervously with her hair. We gathered in the living room, and I felt my mother's apprehension radiating through the space. Thank you all for coming, my mother said, her voice shaky but resolute. I know this is a difficult time for us, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page regarding Dad's treatment. As we settled into our seats, I could feel the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on us. My father sat in a chair, looking more fragile than ever. I took a deep breath, hoping that this meeting would bring us closer together. We've talked with the doctors about the best course of action, my mother continued. They've outlined a treatment plan that we need to follow closely, and I want to make sure we all understand what that entails. What are the options? Jake asked, leaning forward, his expression serious. My mother explained the treatment details, outlining the medications and therapies my father would need to undergo. There was a somber mood in the room as we absorbed the information. Megan spoke up, her voice trembling. Is he going to be okay? I mean, really okay? None of us can predict the future, my father replied, his tone steady. But we have to remain hopeful. The doctors believe we have a good chance if we follow through with the treatment. As we continued the discussion, I could see my siblings grappling with their own emotions. Jake was quiet, processing everything, while Megan's anxiety bubbled beneath the surface. I felt a sense of urgency to reassure them, to help them see that we could navigate this together. Dad, we're here for you, I said, looking directly at him. We'll do whatever it takes to support you through this. I appreciate that, Amelia, he replied, his voice filled with emotion. I know this is hard on all of you. I want you to understand that I'm fighting, and I'll keep fighting for all of you. Tears filled Megan's eyes as she nodded. We just want you to be okay. The conversation continued, and we began to share our fears, concerns, and hopes. It felt like we were finally peeling back the layers that had built up over the years, exposing the vulnerability we all felt. I realized that in this moment, despite the pain, we were growing closer as a family. After the meeting, I felt emotionally drained but hopeful. We had acknowledged our fears, and in doing so, we had begun to forge a stronger bond. I hoped that this was the turning point we needed. As the weeks passed, we continued to support my father through his treatment. I became the primary point of contact for coordinating appointments and managing his medications. It was a challenging role, but I embraced it with determination. Each day, I watched my father fight through the physical and emotional toll of the illness, and it filled me with admiration. During one particularly difficult day, I sat with him in the hospital, holding his hand as he underwent treatment. I could see the exhaustion etched on his face, and my heart ached for him. Dad, you're so strong, I said softly, trying to provide comfort. You're fighting this every step of the way. Sometimes I don't feel strong, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. There are moments when I feel like giving up. You can't, I said, squeezing his hand tightly. You have us. We're all here cheering you on. As he looked at me, I could see the flicker of hope in his eyes. I know. It means everything to me to have you here. In those moments, I felt a deeper connection forming between us. We were no longer just father and daughter. We were allies in a battle against an unseen enemy. I realized that our shared experiences were helping to heal the rifts that had divided us for so long. However, as we navigated my father's treatment, I was also acutely aware of the tension that still lingered in the background. My mother was struggling, trying to hold everything together while balancing her own fears. I could see her fatigue etched in her features, and it worried me. One evening, I found her sitting on the porch, staring out into the distance. Mom, are you okay? I asked, taking a seat beside her. She sighed, leaning back in her chair. I don't know, Amelia. I'm trying to be strong for your father, but it's so hard. I feel like I'm losing him, and I can't bear the thought. I placed my hand on hers, feeling the warmth of her skin. You're not losing him. He's fighting, and we're all fighting with him. But it's okay to feel overwhelmed. We're in this together. I've spent so long trying to maintain appearances, to keep everything perfect, she confessed, tears glistening in her eyes. But I've realized that what truly matters is being there for each other, not just in good times, but in the difficult ones too. Exactly, I said softly. We can't control what happens, but we can choose to support each other through it. As we sat in silence, I felt a sense of understanding blooming between us. It was a delicate moment, one that reminded me of the importance of vulnerability in rebuilding our relationship. The next few weeks were a blur of treatments and emotional ups and downs. My father faced challenges, and there were moments of despair, but each time we rallied around him, offering our love and support. We shared laughter, tears, and moments of joy, each one a reminder of the resilience of our family. Then one day, after a particularly intense treatment session, I received a call from my mother. Amelia, can you come home? We need to talk about your father's condition. My heart raced as I drove to their house, anxiety clawing at my insides. What could this mean? I braced myself for the worst as I entered the familiar home, the air thick with tension. When I reached the living room, I found my parents waiting for me, their expression serious. What's going on? I asked, my voice trembling. We have some news, my mother began, her hands clasped tightly together. The doctor called with an update on your father's condition. I felt my breath catch in my throat, fear gripping my heart. What did he say? He's responding well to the treatment, she replied, her voice breaking slightly. But we need to consider the next steps carefully. The doctor has recommended more aggressive treatment options. I let out a shaky breath, a mix of relief and apprehension flooding over me. What does that mean for him? It means that we need to act quickly, my father said, his voice steady, but filled with concern. I want to fight, but I also need to understand the risks involved. As the conversation continued, I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on us. My parents were grappling with their fears, and I could see the emotional toll it was taking. But amid the uncertainty, I felt a flicker of hope. My father was willing to fight, and as long as we were together, we would face whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, we worked together to navigate the challenges ahead. We attended appointments, researched options, and discussed what the future might hold. It was a time of intense bonding, and I felt a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to be there for my family. Then one evening, as we gathered for dinner, my mother suddenly turned to me. Amelia, I've been thinking. We should create a support group for other families going through similar challenges. We could help them navigate their own journeys. I felt a surge of pride at her idea. That's a great idea, Mom. We've learned so much through this process, and we could offer valuable support. Together, we began planning the details, reaching out to local hospitals and community organizations. It felt empowering to take our experience and turn it into something positive, and I could see the determination shining in my mother's eyes. As we launched the support group, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We began hosting meetings, bringing together families facing similar challenges. Sharing our experiences created a sense of community, and I could see how our efforts were making a difference. However, just as things seemed to be moving in a positive direction, I received another unexpected call from my mother. Amelia, I need you to come home. It's urgent. Panic surged through me as I raced to their house. What's going on? I asked as soon as I stepped inside. We need to talk, she said, her expression grave. It's about your father's health. As I sat down, I felt the weight of dread settle over me. What happened? The doctors have recommended a more aggressive approach, she explained, her voice shaking. They want to start treatment immediately, but it comes with significant risks. I felt my heart race as I processed her words. What kind of risks are we talking about? They need to prepare us for the possibility of complications. It's a lot to handle, and I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. We'll get through this. We're a team, remember? We can face whatever comes our way. I just don't want to lose him, she sobbed, and I could feel the weight of her fear pressing down on us both. I know, I said softly, but we have to trust the doctors and stay hopeful. He's fighting, and we have to be strong for him. As I sat there with my mother, I felt the gravity of our situation more acutely than ever. We were on the brink of a new chapter, one filled with uncertainty, but I knew we could face it together. In the following days, we prepared for my father's upcoming treatment. I spent hours researching and learning about the options available, determined to arm myself with knowledge. We met with the medical team to discuss the risks and benefits, and as we navigated the complexities, I could feel the bond between us strengthening. The day of the treatment arrived, and I stood by my father's side, ready to support him through the process. As he prepared to undergo the procedure, I held his hand tightly, determined to be his anchor. I'm scared, Amelia, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I know, Dad, I said, looking him in the eye. But you're not alone. We're all here for you, and we believe in you. As the medical team wheeled him away, I felt a mixture of fear and hope. We were embarking on a difficult journey, but I knew we would face it together. Days turned into weeks as my father underwent treatment, and I found myself navigating the emotional highs and lows that came with it. There were moments of progress and setbacks, and each day brought its own set of challenges. But through it all, I felt a newfound strength within myself. I was learning to balance my family obligations with my own needs, and I realized that I didn't have to choose between them and my happiness. I could be there for my family while also prioritizing my own well being. As my father continued his treatment, I saw glimpses of the man he used to be. He was determined to fight, and that determination inspired me. I knew that together, we could face whatever lay ahead. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, my father turned to me. I want you to know how proud I am of you, Amelia. You've handled everything with such grace and strength. Thank you, Dad, I replied, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I couldn't have done it without your support. We're in this together. As I looked at my parents, I realized that our relationship was evolving. We were no longer just a family bound by obligation. We were a team, united in the face of adversity. But just when things seemed to be moving in a positive direction, another call from my mother disrupted the fragile peace we had built. Amelia, can you come home? We need to talk about the treatment plan again. My heart sank as I felt the familiar sense of dread creeping back in. What's going on? It's about your father, she said, her voice trembling. We need to discuss the next steps. As I drove to their house, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. I had come so far, and I wasn't going to let fear dictate my choices. I would face whatever news awaited me, ready to stand by my family's side. When I arrived, I found my parents waiting for me in the living room, their expressions serious. "Thank you for coming," my mother said, her voice strained. "We have some updates regarding your father's health." As I sat down, I felt the tension in the air, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us. My father looked tired, and I could see the toll that the treatment was taking on him. The doctor entered the room, and my heart raced as he began to speak. "Thank you for being here. I want to discuss your father's recent test results." As he outlined the findings, I felt a mixture of fear and hope. We had come so far, but the road ahead was still filled with challenges. And as the doctor spoke, I realized that this journey was far from over. But no matter what lay ahead, I knew we would face it together, stronger than ever before.